Josh the manga lad came to retrieve his title. I guess technically he did not watch anime. He specifically avoided watching anime. Kind of big brain, if you think about it.
What up, it's your boy. I know I'm
Hello.
super late to this video. You've probably already seen a million of these already, but as the title says,
I am even later.
I have just finished watching the highly anticipated, I guess, Netflix One Piece live action season. Again, apologies if this is super late. I wanted to get this video out immediately after I watched it, but unfortunately, I was just over in Europe for 2.5 weeks with the Trash Taste boys because we just finished our Trash Taste.
I wanted to go to the tour so bad, but I had to take a flight. I really wanted to get a spot in like London, but no shot am I flying out. No shot. Like if it was somewhere closer by, I could have like gotten, I don't know, like a train, something, I don't know. I wasn't gonna fly out, no shot.
Europe tour, which went absolutely amazing, by the way. Big thank you to everyone who did show up to that. But today is not about that. Today is about the One Piece Netflix live action. I've made a couple of videos already on this channel watching the 2 trailers about it, and I said I was going to make a video talking about my thoughts on it.
They talked about it briefly on Trash Taste as well.
Here it is. What did I think about the Netflix One Piece live action? Well, it was actually really good. I call it the first season because from the sounds of it, a second season is probably going to be coming out, considering the fact that this was actually a pretty big success for the Netflix guys, not just for the numbers that it pulled, but also for, I guess, the commercial and critical response that this series.
I keep saying this. I keep hearing so many stories of people getting into One Piece now. Philip DeFranco started watching One Piece because of the live action version. It's insane. Asmongold's dad said One Piece is good. It's just the universal and people keep asking, why does everything need to be turned into live action? This is why. This is what we could have. Imagine. I do still think there are things that should just be left in animation, though, to be fair. I don't think it's a universal W, but with One Piece, it is a very big W.
He's got, considering it is...
We're seeing exactly what happens when a good live action comes out. Same thing happened to Walking Dead, by the way.
A Western production One Piece anime live action, which doesn't have the greatest track record, for those of you who know anything about that. And I would know, considering the fact that I have watched pretty much every single anime live action that has ever been created. So naturally, since I'm already this far down the rabbit hole, I decided to give this one a watch. 8 episodes, about an hour each in terms of
make a good product and people will like it. Yes, imagine that. I think the interview we read with like the Tomorrow Studios people, when they were like, yeah, we learned that people wanted to be faithful to the source material. I think that one sentence, it wasn't obviously that, I'm paraphrasing here, but I think that one sentence really illuminated like where did this all go wrong. Because it seems like a lot of them really went into it being like, we're going to take inspiration from it and change it a lot. When no one wants that, you know? I feel like there was a, like a big, they were really like detached, I guess, or not in touch with their actual viewers. Now they seem to have corrected that, and hopefully we see that with the Death Note version as well. Because they already messed up once, Netflix, with Death Note. Maybe now they've seen One Piece and it's like, okay, if you're faithful, you're gonna pop off. Let's do that again. Maybe, hopefully.
All the way up to basically Arlong Park. I'm going to go into little spoiler territory here in case you have never seen, watched, or read One Piece before. If you haven't, then I don't know why you're watching this
Witcher
video
was
at
sort
all.
of a
So if you don't want to get spoiled on the first however many chapters or anime episodes Arlong Park goes up to, then I would suggest you go and watch those first, read those first. Hey, even watch the One Piece live action first in case you don't want to get spoiled. But if you don't care about spoilers or you've already seen it, then hey, you're in the right place. So let's just jump right into it. For a Western adaptation, for a Western production, which apparently the production value for this was like freaking insane. Apparently it was like $100 million+ from what I saw from some sources, which is absolutely crazy to think about. It was actually really good, and you know, considering the fact the source material being a shonen manga, not just a shonen manga, but the biggest shonen manga ever created, held the biggest manga series, anime series ever created, with an absolute die-hard, hardcore fan base, which, you know, I'm not necessarily in that camp necessarily. I'm absolutely a One Piece.
Am I considered in the die-hard part now that I've made like years worth of videos on it? Am I? I think I am.
Fan. I've freaking loved One Piece ever since I started reading it. But considering the die-hard fan base, which recently has turned incredibly toxic, in my opinion, there was definitely...
People are saying this a lot. I think I know why. I think it has nothing to do with people turning toxic. I think it's Twitter. The moment a certain individual decided that you could monetize content by... not by, like, actual good engagements, but any engagements. You know who did that 13 years ago, I think? YouTube. You know what happened on YouTube when you could just farm out views, response videos, and a bunch of other nonsense that everybody knew was a horrible, horrible, horrible thing, right? So what did we do? We fixed that. Because no one cares about just like any engagement at all. It doesn't generate any value, and it only degrades the conversation, which is exactly what's happening on Twitter now. You make the biggest bait post of all time on Twitter, it's gonna pop off. It seems like people are getting like more weird and more toxic with the fan bases. They're not. It's just a positive feedback loop, because at the end of the day, people running these accounts, the only thing they care about are numbers. So I don't think it's the One Piece community that's gotten more toxic. I don't think so.
A lot of pressure for this live action to succeed, and you know,
social media in a nutshell. I think it's social media only when badly managed, and I think Twitter is very, very badly managed. If you're trying to actually look for a decent conversation, Twitter is not the place to go. Simple as that.
To say, in my opinion, I think it actually succeeded in the best way that it could have, despite all the odds. The acting at first was a little bit, I guess, you know, uncanny in a lot of ways, considering the fact that Oda's characters are definitely a lot more anime-fied, a lot more manga-fied than a lot of shonen protagonists, especially Luffy being,
show me a good place to go, YouTube. Unironically, YouTube comments, unless you're trying to flame someone, they're a very, very good place for discussion. At least on my channel, I've seen many actually good debates happen. Obviously, sometimes it is just a flame debate. Yes, of course. Sometimes I just shadow ban those people because it's kind of funny. They're just speaking into the void.
Off the
at least YouTube doesn't incentivize negative engagement. I think we can agree there, you know? People making bait posts on YouTube do not get paid for it.
Type of character. I thought at first it would have been really, really difficult to portray in a live action setting, but the actor who played Luffy did a I
guess they technically do with videos, but that doesn't count.
You know, again,
because that's a barrier to entry.
Too overboard with it, but you could definitely feel the Luffy's presence inside of this actor. Like, he really played Luffy in probably the best way that it could have been played. He wasn't too over the top, he wasn't too like erratic, he wasn't too like balls to the walls, batshit insane that Luffy is, even right from the beginning of One Piece. But you know, you could definitely feel that vibe in it for sure. So considering the fact that we don't actually get that far into the One Piece story, we don't get to see all of the Straw Hat crew, we basically go all the way up to Arlong Park, which for those of you who are about One Piece, you would know that it covers up to Sanji. So you get Luffy, Zoro, Nami, Usopp, and Sanji as the 5 Straw Hat crew members, which I think for one was a good part to cover, especially in this first season, considering the fact that we didn't really know how it was going to pan out, and I guess the production didn't really know how it was going to pan out. So before you know, going into things like the Alabaster arc or the Chopper arc especially, I think this was
I've said this before, I think Arlong Park is a perfect stopping point. It would have been nice to see Logtown, but I think Arlong Park makes it a very like cohesive story. I do think in many ways Logtown, prologue, epilogue, all that would have worked nicely as a season finale, but I think it will also work very, very nicely as either a season premiere or a completely separate, like, thing that we've been talking about, like a potential movie or something like that, you know? I rarely see big threads on YouTube, most single comments with 2 or 3 responses max. YouTube is not a place made for a discussion. I guess, to some extent, sure, some of the larger threads, sure, but Reddit is probably the best one, you know, because Reddit actually, like, people vote on Reddit. I think with Reddit, there's a different problem with, like, hive minds forming. Like, if you say a unpopular opinion or a bad opinion, you're just going to get downvoted into oblivion. But it's like, I think no social media is perfect, of course. I think Twitter is just particularly bad.
Ended, and it's a really good, I guess, taste test.
Which, by the way, Reddit is doing the same thing now. So ignore what I just said. Reddit is going to be doing the same exact thing as Twitter because the CEO admires Elon Musk. Look it up.
For those who have never watched, never read, didn't know anything about One Piece. Like, I would even go as far as to say that this One Piece live action might honestly be the best thing to show non-One Piece fans if you want to get them into One Piece. Because, as much as that might be like a blasphemous thing to say, it's
I think so. I'm gonna have to agree with him there. It is a blasphemous thing to say, but it is also true. The amount of times, I've said this many times before as well, when someone tells me I don't watch anime, I roll my eyes 180 degrees. Then I ask myself, is there an alternative form I can introduce you to the story so that you start watching the anime? That is the number one thing I think of. Is there an alternate way I could get you into watching this thing and just trick you into watching anime? I don't even try to argue with these people. I think writing off an entire medium, this is a very, by the way, pleasant freeze frame. But it's so silly to me that you could write off an entire medium, but whatever. Sure. Just watch the live action version. It's going to be fun.
Really difficult to talk a non-anime fan, a non-manga fan, a non-One Piece fan
into watching
start
anime, yeah.
This gargantuan adventure that is One Piece. Like, it's very difficult to go up to someone and being like, hey, there's this show called One Piece.
The greatest thing about this is exactly Avatar, a fantastic gateway into anime. Things like that. You need to be methodical about these things, right? This is where you go a little bit psycho. You're like, okay, you don't watch anime. Okay. How about we watch a Ghibli movie together? Just one. You watch a movie, you're like, oh, you like this? How about you watch this? It's a thriller. It's like I don't know, like Death Note or Monster. It's a thriller. I heard you're really into true crime. I think you're gonna like this. Oh, so you like that? Okay, well, how about this? And then you just constantly keep moving the goalposts until suddenly they're just a weeb. It's great.
One Piece that is absolutely incredible world building, incredible storytelling, really emotional at times, just all around good shonen anime manga fun. But the problem is you have to read 100+ volumes or watch 1,000+ anime episodes. I think the moment you say the how many episodes or
side note, I think this is why Attack on Titan is doing the goofy titling. I think this is exactly why we will never actually get a proper, I think anime seasons now will become more and more wacky because people are afraid of watching a series that has 7 seasons. Because that is what Attack on Titan effectively has. It has 6-7 seasons, effectively. But no, it's actually final season. Part 4, Part 3, Part 95. It's different. I think it's literally someone has found out that that's how people respond to series in terms of starting them. If there are too many seasons, they won't watch it. But if there are fewer seasons with more episodes, they'll watch it. I genuinely think that's what it is.
Chapters that you have to go.
One Piece is obviously an outlier because it has 1,000 episodes. But yes.
Through that is an instant turnoff for a lot of people. Whereas if you show them this live action, you just have to say, hey, there's only 8 episodes. And you get a pretty good understanding of what the world of One Piece has to offer. So I genuinely think I might honestly start using this live action series to recommend to non-manga and anime fans because, again, it's a good taste test. It's not too long. You get a good understanding of the world that is revolving around One Piece, all the important information that you need to start off your journey with One Piece without it necessarily going too far or necessarily being too long-winded. Obviously, with the amount of money that was thrown into this production, the set design is freaking incredible.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And I think the one thing that a lot of live action anime do wrong, which I think One Piece live action nailed pretty solidly, was the fashion department in terms of how the characters were dressed. Now,
my only complaint is that in some cases they were still a little too clean. I really, really like the fact that they changed outfits, but I do still think that in some cases they looked too clean. They should have had more dirt. It should have been more scruffed up, something like that. It looked a little bit too clean in some cases.
If you have watched or read One Piece, you would know that a lot of the characters dressed pretty weird. You know, there is such a wide eclectic range of costumes and characters, and you know, the way that they dress and the way that they act and the way that they play out these characters, that it's definitely a bit of a challenge for the costume department to nail. But I think in terms of getting, I guess, the subtleties of the different characters without it looking too much like cosplay was done in a really great way. I mean, for example, you know, look at the Full Metal Alchemist live action. I think the biggest caveat for the Full Metal Alchemist live action that really, I think, dragged it through the dirt, in my opinion, was just the fact that they tried to portray the characters a little bit too similarly, a little bit.
I think something like, this is a side note, I do think like things like Luffy's shoes and stuff, I think those are all small details that made it actually fit better. But that's beside the point. What I was going to say, I think Aang's tattoos in the upcoming Avatar Netflix series are another very, very good example of this. Because in the anime, it's just blue. I just called Avatar an anime. Hold on to your pants. I did say that. But yes, it's just a blue line. In the Netflix version, it is also a blue line, but if you look very, very closely, they are actually tattoos. Like, they have texture. They have actual markings underneath, but it still looks like the same blue arrow that we know, and not the movie that shall not be named, which was a weird tattoo arrow that didn't really look like the thing at all. It has the vibe of the original, while still adapting it for the live-action medium, which is exactly what you want to do. Big W.
Too faithfully to the original source material, to the point where all the characters just look like they were in cosplay. Now, granted...
Also, greatest thing about One Piece is they change outfits all the time. They're not action figures.
I'm not saying that the One Piece live-action costume department, like, did a 10 out of 10, 100% amazing, perfect job at it, of course, but I think, again, considering the source material that they're working with and how difficult that is to translate to a live-action, I think they did pretty alright with it. I mean, you know, I talked about it in the previous videos where I watched the trailer and we saw the first glimpses of a lot of these character designs. I think the, I guess, purposeful exclusion of some of the characters' physical characteristics from this live action actually played to its benefits. For example, Usopp in this live action doesn't have his signature long nose, or Sanji doesn't have his signature squiggly eyebrow. And you know, again, a lot of hardcore One Piece fans will come on camera and be like, oh, they completely ruined this character, like Usopp is not the same.
The biggest thing with Sanji is that, like, Sanji's eyebrow is actually important, you know? So I hope that this isn't a Mikasa tattoo situation. If you know, you know, right? So they changed it in the anime, and then changed it again in the anime, and it's just a retcon. Like, it's just a blatant retcon, everyone knows it, but everyone's just like, okay, we see what happened here, it's fine, you know? I hope they don't... Why do I keep pausing at the best times? But I hope it's not the case with Sanji, that he suddenly gains the squiggly eyebrow when it's important. I hope they do it somehow differently. Whether it's like some tattoo that he has hidden somewhere, which is, I think, would be a good way of going about it, right? That, like, the crew suddenly asks, hey, what's that tattoo? And he's like, oh, don't worry about it, it's nothing. And then later we find out that it was, like, his marking or something like that. I don't know, something. Like, on his lower back, he has, like, a 3, and you're like, wait, why do you have a 3? He's like, it's nothing, don't worry about it. And we find out what it is. I think something like that would be cool. Just don't retcon it.
Without his nose. Sanji isn't the same without his eyebrow, but, you know, I think it was a really good...
It's a good change.
You know, exclusion.
It's a very good change.
For this live action, because it wasn't distracting. Like, again, I feel they really tried to make sure that they nailed, I guess, the personality of these characters before 100% being committed to making the characters look exactly the same. Like, they wanted to... Like, I could tell from this live action that even without the nose, that was Usopp. Even without the eyebrow, that was Sanji. And I think that is, first of all, a big clap to the directors and the producers and the actors especially for being able to portray these characters in the way that they portrayed them, even with some of the physical traits not being apparent from the get-go. And, you know, what can I say, man? Makinyu playing Zoro... I've seen so many goddamn thirst trap videos on TikTok already of this live action Zoro, and hey, I can't blame them. Live action Zoro looks badass as fuck. I would say probably one of my favorite characters to watch, just because of, again, I mean, I just love Zoro as a character in general, but I think Makinyu did such a fantastic job of kind of showing the more cooler edge.
I need to make a video about Berserk, about Zoro, and about the anime that I still can't pronounce. Those are three things that there's a thread in my brain. I can tie all them together. It's gonna be good.
Subtler, quieter moments of Zoro, again, without it being overly edgy, without it being overly anime. And again, same thing can be said for Luffy as well. Like, yes, you know, the quirkiness and the, I guess, the off the walls nature of Luffy is definitely present through this live action series, but I think it was done in, again, a very subtle way without it taking away from Luffy's character. Like, that was clearly Luffy. When he's goofy, he's goofy. When he's serious, he is goddamn serious. But I would have to say my favorite character, my favorite portrayal, I think, of any character in this live action has to go to Buggy. I mean,
the fact that Buggy, like, number one, the fact that One Piece is the first successful anime adaptation, mind-boggling. Number two, Buggy stole the show. We literally hit 2 jackpots. How did that happen?
For one, Buggy is an amazing character. I love him in the manga and anime, but this live action portrayal of Buggy, oh my god, this actor fucking nails Buggy to the point where it's like genuinely terrifying to watch, but in the best way possible. Because again, you have to remember, Buggy is a villain, technically speaking, in the lore of One Piece.
This is my favorite thing. I talked about this in my video as well. The fact that they just didn't shy away from the violence at all, and Zoro just slices a dude in half. I think that is the biggest W they did. It's like pirates, you know.
Buggy is kind of
which, by the way, not if, but when we get to Water 7 and Zoro drops the line, "We're not playing pirates here," well, wouldn't that hit a lot harder? It's gonna be great.
A villain, an antagonist, if you will, that is sometimes cooperative with the Straw Hat crew, as is shown in, you know, this live action, especially around episodes 6 and 7. But just like the first time you see Buggy, and the first time, you know, the Luffy, Zoro, and Nami get captured by Buggy's crew, and they're in that little circus area, and you really get to like see Buggy's character and just how maniacal and deranged,
equally
and
menacing and competent. That is a very good description.
I think the portrayal of that was done so goddamn well. And again, like, I couldn't help but think of, you know, like a Joker character, honestly, like Dark Knight.
That's what we were afraid of, right? That he's just going to be like the Joker, but he's not, which is the best thing. He has the vibe, but he's still Buggy, which is like the most tightrope thing I've ever seen anyone walk. It boggles my mind that of all the characters, because I thought Buggy would be where everything falls apart. And he's like one of the best, and everyone loves him. It's insane to me.
Joker style, I think some of that has definitely been played off through this portrayal of Buggy, but done, again, in a really unique and fun way that is clearly Buggy. Like, there is no denying that that is Buggy, and I think this actor did a fantastic job of Buggy's portrayal, and it was definitely one of my favorite performances in this live action, for sure. Now, I'm giving all of these praises, but I'm going to be a little bit picky right here, and I guess, you know, say some of, I guess, the things that maybe could have been done a little bit better, because again, as much as I really enjoyed this live action adaptation, I would say already it is probably in like my top 5 live action anime adaptations for sure. It doesn't come without its faults either. Specifically, the Usopp arc. Again, like,
the Usopp arc has been quite
arc,
hit and miss from what I hear.
And, you know, Kuro as a villain was okay, in my opinion.
I think Kuro was a huge improvement on the source material, but the whole arc feels it feels, in a weird way, both too fast and both too dragged out compared to everything else, which is very weird. That said, I do prefer the live action version of Kuro to the anime. And Kuro was the first major villain in One Piece that I actually liked. Because keep in mind, I hated Buggy originally.
Definitely not the most interesting villain in early One Piece for sure, but I just felt that the Usopp arc, even though it only went for 2 episodes, episode 3 and 4 specifically, I just felt it was just dragged out a little bit too long, in my opinion.
Yes.
Like, I feel Usopp got a lot of screen time.
The fact that I still wish they would have given Usopp a little bit more, like, backstory. A little bit. His mom's scene still feels so odd. I joked about it. It's like, hey, oh, you're dead. Well, anyway.
Time in those 2 episodes, and yet Usopp himself didn't really leave a mark during that screen time, which is weird, right? Because
to be fair, that's the same exact thing that I felt in the anime and the manga. That's exactly how I felt in the source material as well. I only started to like Usopp around like Water 7. Even Buggy and Dory wasn't super impactful for me. It was only way later that I really began to appreciate Usopp for who he is. And then way later on, well, I mean, we all know where that leads.
The fact that this is technically the Usopp arc, Syrup Village is technically the Usopp arc. I just
think he has the weakest story early on.
The existence of Usopp in those 2 episodes was really underwhelming in a lot of ways. And again, I feel the relationship between Kaya and Usopp was just dragged out a little bit too much, in my opinion. Kaya got way more screen time than Usopp, I think, and left more of an impression for me anyway.
In a weird way.
It's been a while since I've read the original chapters and watched the original episodes of the Syrup Village arc, but I don't remember this being dragged out as much in the manga, personally. I feel like, Oda really wanted to show, I guess, the romantic dynamic between Kaya and Usopp in this arc, and really like show off Kuro as a villain. And again,
I think Oda has said that he will never write any form of romance for whatever reason. I think for most shonen writers, the simplest explanation is that they give is just that I'm not good at it, so I don't do it. And obviously the live action version changed that a little bit. So I think that's one reason why it's there in the first place, Whereas in the manga and in the anime, it was sort of dubious and very, very ambiguous and not really there. But I'm curious to see how that actually changes things in the future as well.
He's a perfectly fine villain for early One Piece, but I just felt like it was just a little bit too dragged out in this live action. And 2 episodes doesn't sound like much, but considering the entire season is 8 episodes, dedicating a whole quarter of this season to what is essentially like filler essentially what is essentially filler in this early season is just, I just felt, again, was just a little bit too dragged out, in my opinion. And on the contrary, the whole Baratie arc,
discussions around filler will be interesting to see as we get further on, because I'm wondering if season 2, people have been talking about combining things, like completely removing things like Whiskey Peak and stuff. There have been a lot of ideas that have been floated around. When we get closer to actually, season 2 starting to form and starting to get more information, I think we can go through all those. But it'll be very interesting to see what happens when things are just truncated, and there's sort of absolutely no filler whatsoever. Are we going to be entering the opposite direction? Because a surprising number of people have said that some of this arc felt like filler, even though I don't think it did. And purely, like, factually, it's also not filler, right? It's just a remix from the source material. But I don't know. I think this will be very important moving forward with just how long One Piece is in general.
Where we are first introduced to Sanji, I think was just a little bit too short. I feel like they could have extended out Baratie, or even extended out Arlong Park a little bit, instead of giving so much screen.
Both Baratie and Arlong Park both should have been longer, I think.
Time to Kaya and Usopp, in my opinion anyway. I just felt Sanji was kind of like really rushed in. We didn't really have enough time, I guess, to like know Sanji's character before he decides to join the crew to Arlong Park and save everyone. Like, it definitely felt like it was the most shoehorned in, which is a shame, because I absolutely freaking love Sanji as a character. The Baratie arc is a great arc, in my opinion. Like, Zeph is such a fucking badass character, and I definitely loved the flashback between Zeph and Sanji. I thought that was so done really good. Well, and definitely it provided that emotional, I guess, baggage to the viewers to really like get to know and feel for not just Sanji but also Zeph as well in a great way considering the short runtime. But again, I just wish we just got to know a little bit more of Sanji. We got to see a little bit more of those connections with Sanji in this live action, because one of the big changes that they made was the fact that Arlong shows up.
You know what I kind of wish? This might be a hot take. You know what I wish? I wish they'd add more filler. I wish they would have added, like, every episode, just have 10 minutes of the crew just talking on the ship. That's it. Nothing happens. We just chat. We just chat as crewmates, just talk about random nonsense. Where are we going next? What have we been doing? Just something. Just write in some dialogue to slowly build, like, the core, you know? Because I feel like in the anime, a lot of that core is established subconsciously because of how long the series is. The series is just so long that even though the characters don't even talk to each other, we feel like they're getting closer because we are traveling alongside them. That is not the case in live action. It's also the thing that people debate. How much of each other's stories do they even know? You know, that's another thing that pops up a lot. Because we know all of them. But do they know all of them? It's things like that I feel like if they vocalize in live action, which, by the way, you say in the chat we had filler Garp scenes. Exactly. And the reason why they're filler and people kind of didn't like them is because they're kind of boring. You know, they're sitting around a single table. I liked them. I thought they were fine. I wish we got to see some of that, like very low budget, just them sitting around a table. Occasionally we see that in the anime. Like them just sitting around the dinner table, and like Sanji bringing out a dish. Which, by the way, if we don't get more cooking montages in future seasons, I will drop the show. You better give me Sanji cooking. I need cooking sequences. They're the best. With that jazzy music. Every single time. But yeah, point being, I wish they do more of this. Just them chatting around the dinner table or something. Because I think that will like help alleviate a lot of these things where people feel like they don't know the characters enough.
To Baratie, which I'm pretty sure in the original manga did not happen. Which, look, I'm not going to fault the writers or Oda.
Wait, what? Hold on.
You know, just up to Baratie, which was the fact that Arlong shows up to Baratie.
Yeah.
Because again, with the limited amount of episodes, they had to introduce Arlong in a quick fashion that would make the transition to Arlong Park a lot smoother and make a lot more sense. So I'm totally fine with this inclusion and everything like that. And again, you know, it's been a while since I've read the manga, watched the anime, so I might not be fully accurate on this. I'm sure One Piece fans will correct me in the comments below, so please go ahead and do that. But Arlong Park was really dope as well. And you know, Arlong's portrayal, when I watched the trailer, did look a little bit underwhelming at first. You know, I think I called him like a basement dweller from how he dresses in this live action, but the actor who portrayed him definitely made Arlong out to be like an evil motherfucker and a really sinister motherfucker as well. So I'm really happy with how it turned out in the end. But I think one big thing that I just thought was a little bit like weird, I guess, was the conclusion to everything, especially the conclusion to the Arlong fight. It just felt a little bit underwhelming. You know,
I can see this, and I think this is something they'll need to deal with a lot in portraying power without relying on shonen tropes. Because the shonen fights, they go on for a long time, and they're usually a fight of endurance, right? Like, look at the Wano fight. How long was it? It's insane, right? Whereas in live action, you can't do that without seeming goofy, so you need to make things fast. And by making things fast, a huge climax will be just as fast as a random dude we killed on the street. This will be interesting to see with villains like Crocky, where it's not as simple as running in and beating him. I want to see how they tackle this. Because I can definitely see how some people might think that the Arlong conclusion was very fast and sort of underwhelming. I can see that. And I don't know how much of my judgment is clouded by the fact that I just know the source material, and I just sort of fill in the gaps through that. Because I think it was okay. I do still think that all of Arlong Park was just too fast. Every single scene should have had like 20 seconds added to it, if that makes sense. One thing that was scene was basically his men and the way it was cut. Like author wasn't able to make more than one sentence, and they had to take. Oh, you mean like constantly punching in? That is an actual filmmaking technique. I think I know what you mean, because I remember that scene. It's like where he says every single line, and it like sharply cuts closer and closer and closer. That's an actual thing. Yeah.
I get it. It's early One Piece. It didn't have the most like grandiose fights or the most grandiose conclusions or anything, but I felt like the Arlong fight could have been extended a little bit further. You know, I feel like we could have seen some more like close combat stuff like that. I mean, you know, the outside of Arlong Park, you know, the whole Sanji and Zoro fighting part and the Usopp fighting part was really dope. I really like that. But
I'm surprised he says the Usopp fight wasn't even faster, because I think Zoro and Sanji actually got the best of Arlong Park, and I think Usopp was another one that was like sort of underwhelming, even though it was basically the same thing as it was in the anime. It just didn't feel as such a big triumph because it was fast. You know,
I guess the fight between Luffy and Arlong just felt a little bit underwhelming in my opinion, a little bit too rushed in my opinion, but maybe that's just me. And I guess a little interesting
it's a hard problem,
aspect
basically,
of this live action, which I think I'm the only one who did this, was the fact that I actually kind of watched this half in English and with the Japanese dub as well, because for those of you who don't know, there is actually a Japanese dub for this live action, which was actually dubbed by all of the original voice.
I've checked out bits and pieces of it. It's fun, but I still stand by what I said. I want them to fix mouth flaps. Then I'm going to give it a proper shot. I can't. My brain, maybe it's because I've grown up on poorly dubbed Latvian stuff, so I'm just like, please give me the source material. Just give it to me in the original language. Stop it. And in live action, it's just bad. No, I don't want it. It's fun that they did it, and I think it's great, especially because, I mean, obviously, people in Japan want to watch it with the original VAs. I think that is perfectly fine. The fact that they got everyone on board is great. That's the biggest thing you always see with these things. Recasting characters that everyone loves, just no, don't do it, you know? So this is a universal W. Not for me, though.
Actors of the anime, which I thought was really cool. So cool. I wanted to kind of see how those, I guess, voice actors portrayed their own characters. But
one thing I noticed, he might talk about it as well, but from what I saw, it feels like they are like this is like a huge compliment to the actual Japanese VAs. They are adjusting their performances to what is actually happening in live action and not just doing the Luffy voice like from the anime. I felt like Luffy in the live action version in the Japanese dub, the bits and pieces of what I've seen, which is again not a lot. It felt like it was toned down, which it should be, I think.
This time in a live action settings, and especially during some of the more like emotional moments as well, and the more like epic moments, the moments where we hear some like really iconic lines, for example, like, you know, the part right near the end where, you know, Nami finally snaps and asks Luffy and the Straw Hat crew for their help. Like, that is a really powerful line in the original manga and the original anime, and I wanted to see, I guess, the differences in delivery between the original English actor and the original Japanese voice actor. So I actually watched a lot of scenes kind of twice. I even watched some whole episodes twice, once in Japanese and once in English, just to discern the differences.
I think the big thing for Joey is that he actually knows the language. I talk about a bit about this in one of the Attack on Titan videos, but one thing that I'm starting to think about is like, I prefer the Erwin, I'm sorry, he's not Irvin, he's Erwin. Erwin's dub voice actor, the actual English VA, because I think he is meant to be an inspirational speaker, so when he speaks in English, it actually works. Therefore, I prefer what I actually understand. I've been thinking about these subtle subconscious things that might change my opinion. You know, because generally, I do prefer a lot of the original VAs in the subtitle of Attack on Titan. I would say most of it, actually. There are very few examples which I actually think is very well done in the dub. But Erwin is one that I think is almost universally better in the dub. So I wonder how much of that there is. Like, actually understanding what they're saying and not just like, you know, hearing what they're saying. Because I do think there is a fundamental disconnect between what you hear, like hearing a foreign language, and reading what it means. I don't think it hits the same. I don't. So that's something I want to maybe look at more.
and you know, all of them were done really well,
especially with like these super high stakes scenes.
Obviously fucking killed it. Their performances were actually, I feel, a lot more toned down than the anime, which I think
this is what I've
was
seen as well.
A correct choice, because, you know, they're not voice acting for anime, they're voice acting real people, you know, acting these scenes out, right? And obviously, when compared to an anime, the live action actors are going to be performing their asses off, but definitely just in the nature of live action is going to be a lot more toned down in general compared to anime, which has absolutely no limitations in terms of how hype it can get. So I think the fact that these original voice actors kind of slightly toned it down, like, you know, kind of went from a 10 to like a 7 in terms of performance, in terms of intensity, I think was the correct choice, and it definitely made the dub.
Which, by the way, also, like, the reason why a lot of anime voices need to be exaggerated is because you can't do a lot of facial expressions in anime, because the face is just one tone. You can't do like subtle things with your face as you can with a live human being. You know, a lot of the contact we make is like very, very subtle and very almost subconscious in terms of how we communicate. You can't do that in animation, so you need to like emphasize things far, far more.
A lot more seamless when watching the live action. So I think that was done really well. But honestly, you know, I'm not going to say here, I'm not going to be like a fucking elitist and being like, oh, you should watch this dub in Japanese or you should watch this dub in English. I think both are acceptable. I think both are fine.
Watch things however you like. No one cares.
I think all the performances were actually done really, really well. And yes, you know, there might be some subtle differences. Sure. You know, it might not be like 100% following the source material or whatever, which is one thing that I know a lot of manga and anime fans are really fucking butthurt with when it comes to live action adaptations. But I think the one thing that you guys need to understand, and for people who are saying that need to understand, is that this is not supposed to be a one-for-one recreation. It is an adaptation. And that is a really key word. It's not going to be exactly the same as the source material. Yes, it is taking...
I mean, there are people who question why even make an adaptation in the first place if it's going to be similar, you know? So this kind of goes both ways, but yes, I think they've made a lot of great changes, some that I don't agree with, but of course I vastly prefer the route they've gone down, just not trying to replicate the source material.
A lot of elements from the source material, but obviously they're going to change
a lot of
things
time
up
talking about
for
that.
Pacing issues,
Yes.
for limitations, for what live action actors and CGI can do compared to the, again, no limitations that the world of anime has. And I think despite all of those differences, despite all of the changes that were made, I thought it was a really, really solid live action. I mean, hell, I even like shed a tear in one of the scenes. Again, in the
I didn't. I'm a monster.
Scene where like Nami asks Luffy for help, I kind of teared up. Ain't gonna lie, I kind of teared up. I mean, I cried when I read that in the manga and I watched it in the anime, so I was prepared for it. But there was a part of me that was like, I'm not gonna get emotional again, especially with live action.
I've said this before on streams as well. You know, a story is good. I've gotten sad while working on my own videos because I'm just listening back to the story again, and I'm just like, damn, that was so good. That was so good when I first watched that. That was so good. You know, a story was great when you get that. Like I recently went back for certain things in my Sabaody video, for example, and I'm just listening to that, and I was like, damn Oda, you were cooking. It's not even, I'm not even watching the actual thing. I'm just like, yeah, that was so good. That was so good. So yes, I think this is just a testament to how good the story is that Joey can cry 3 different times.
Action, actors, and everything like that. But hey, you know what? The fact that it managed to get me to shed a tear, even in a scene that I have seen hundreds of times in different languages and in different formats, and I think that's a really big achievement, especially for a live action, especially for a Western production of a show that I think nobody in the world was expecting to be decent or even good. So if I had to give like a numerical score to this live action, I would probably give it like a solid 7 or an 8 out of 10. Again, it's not the most perfect live action I've ever seen, but it honestly doesn't have to be. I think, again, this is a really great step forward for live action.
I'm not even going to say anything about the number because numbers are meaningless. What does a 7 and 8 mean for Joey? No one knows. He talked about his opinion So let's listen to that. Don't look at the number. No one cares about the number.
Action anime, and I think this is just going
Single
to
numbers,
convince a lot of
not a
Western
fan.
productions that, yes, there is a way to make anime live actions work. There is a way to give it justice to the original source material, and I think One Piece did a fantastic job at that. And again, if there is anyone out there who has never heard of anime, never watched One Piece, never even heard of One Piece, but has always wanted to, or maybe you're someone who really wants to recommend One Piece to people, I would say this is a really good place to start.
I think the thing with One Piece is that if you don't even want to get someone into the anime, I think it's just a fun show. I genuinely think it's just a fun little pirate show. I think even on that basis alone, it's worth a recommendation, which is, again, just a testament to how well the story stands up. But obviously, all of us want to get people into the anime, because of course we do.
Start for people, especially since you won't be scaring them away with the 1,000+ chapters and the 100.
Though, like, side note, I do think this is a very good, like, I think it legitimizes anime and the people who would be among those who are like, oh, I don't watch anime. No, I don't. I'm a grown-up. I don't watch anime. That's for children. You know, I think watching something like this and being like, oh, this is taken from an anime? Oh, and it's taken from a shonen? Like a story that is supposed to be mostly just about dudes fighting? Oh, maybe I'll check that anime stuff out, you know, maybe.
Plus volumes. So yeah, you know, considering all of that, we're probably going to get a season 2 of this.
Yes,
let's be real.
It's been confirmed.
And season 2 is where it's going to start to get a little bit dicey. I touched upon this briefly.
I think
in
Chopper
my
is the only
videos
thing
for the trailers, which if you're interested, I've left in the description. But you know, the Chopper is coming up. Robin is coming up, the Alabaster arc is coming up, so you know this is the point in the One Piece story where it's really gonna start to get a little bit more off the walls in terms of, you know, characters, in terms of
I think like Laboon and Chopper are the two things that can really hurt season 2. Aside from that, I don't have many worries, because Buggy in season 1 was like the big one, you know. I guess like an external worry that I have is what will they do with the characters. You know, people are starting to debate this also in some of the subreddits I've seen. We've talked about this on stream. The cast in a live action production is not a anime character that you can draw in 10 years later and is going to be fine. You know, these are people who have signed on to this project, and you're either going to use them or you will lose them. It's simple as that. This is what happened with The Walking Dead. You know, people thought that their characters weren't being used enough, or they were just like written out for like 5 episodes. They were like, no, like I don't want this. I can get a better contract. And this will only keep, like, compounding, because there are only more characters that are going to come into the series. You know, a lot of the arc characters are one-offs, which is fine, but Vivi stays in Alabasta, and she is now appearing in the story. Characters like that, what are we going to do with them? Considering how good job they did with Lord of the Coast, I don't have any worries with Laboon. Laboon is probably a lesser one, yeah. Chopper is the biggest one for me. It's like the biggest. Aside from that, I want to see what they do with Garp's character. I want to see what they do with Kobe and Helmeppo. Do they just get written out, and is that it? We'll see. We'll see. Maybe if they want to go that route, they can just basically, which would be kind of goofy actually. If Kobe and Helmeppo manage to team up with Smoker, I think that'd be kind of goofy.
Power-ups in terms of just how these characters act and everything. I mean, at the end of the final episode, we got a little bit of a sneak peek of Smoker,
yes,
who is an amazing character. So suffice it to say, we're going to start to see Smoker as well in this. And I guess, yeah, speaking of Smoker, before I forget, one aspect that I thought was kind of interesting with this live action was the really heavy usage of Vice Admiral Garp, who is a character, for those of you who don't know, who is a Vice Admiral of the Marines, who is Luffy's grandfather.
The simple explanation is budget.
And, you know, does make an appearance in early One Piece, obviously, but I feel in the live action, he was really heavily featured. And the Marine side of this entire One Piece story was really heavily featured.
Which I think the Marine side makes perfect sense. I think it makes perfect sense, and constantly focusing on Kobe, universal W. Garp is where things can get a little bit dicey, because a lot of it was clearly just for budgetary reasons, and also it sort of messes with some of the reveals later on, which we'll see how those work, but you know.
A lot more than the original manga and anime, and you know, I saw a lot
I would want half of the Garp scenes to be given to the Straw Hats. Them just messing around, like I said before.
A lot of opinions about this, being like, oh, the Marines got too much like screen time. And
Kobe's great though.
Took up too much of
I
the
wish
space.
we get to see more of Kobe.
I actually really liked this change in the live action because again, you kind of get to see like the other side of the story, and
yes, exactly.
The Marines and General Garp and like Kobe and like all these like Marine characters, they're not.
You say General Garp.
Not necessarily like obsolete or unimportant in the grander story of One Piece. Like they definitely are an important part of the One Piece story and the One Piece world. And I think the heavy usage of Garp and the heavy usage of the Marines was actually a really, in my opinion, really great and clever way to really accentuate the world building of One Piece and the world of One Piece.
This is what I said in my video as well. It feels like the world is far more connected in the live action version than it is early on in the anime. And I feel like that is the anime's like one of the biggest strengths, and is one of my favorite aspects of the story. So I do like that everything was connected. Like all of the East Blue feels like, I think I even used this exact phrasing. It feels like one big RPG zone that is like all tied together.
Especially with the limited amount of time that the live action had, because that is one of the strongest elements of One Piece is the world building. Like the world building in One Piece is some of the finest out there in shonen manga, some of the finest in manga in general. And the fact that, Oda decided to really heavily feature the Marines and heavily feature Garp, and I guess the relationship between Garp and Luffy, or the Straw Hat crew, I guess, in this short runtime was a really great, quick, easy to understand way for people to really get into the world of One Piece, because that is what creates some of the most hardcore fans of One Piece, and that's what makes One Piece one of the most popular manga ever created. So I genuinely liked Garp's inclusion in all of this, and all of his, like, I guess, shenanigans and interactions that he had with all sorts of different characters, some of which he never had any interactions with at all. I think it was a really fresh...
Garp and Zeph, best change they made. The fact that Zeph is just casually talking to Garp like an equal is my favorite change they made, and it continues to build up that thing of like just random old dudes in the world being so OP. I love that trope so much. You meet a random old dude, turns out he's like a literal legend who's killed every single bad guy known to man in the past 5 decades. He's like, yeah, I'm living the easy life now, up here in the north, in the forests. It's great. I love it.
Side of the One Piece.
Because Zeph was a mega chat in the manga, but we never saw that.
World that we got to see, and yeah, I really freaking enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend this live action if you have been skeptical about it. And yeah, season 2 is going to be really interesting, depending on when that comes out. And I genuinely hope that at the end of the day, Netflix or any other Western live action producers decide to look at One Piece in a positive way, and to try not to abuse it, because we have a couple of new upcoming anime live actions coming out, even just on Netflix in the next couple of years, which I'm definitely going to be watching. I'm definitely going to be making a video on, like this one, on this channel. So if you're interested in that, please subscribe. But yeah, there are a couple of live actions out there that are in the works and that I'm genuinely scared for, genuinely afraid for, because some of them are based on some of my favorite manga and anime of all time. So let's hope that this One Piece live action is a correct step in the right direction for the future of live action anime.
Yeah, I mean, I think like purely business wise, if you look at One Piece, you're like, oh, so they just kind of did the same thing that the manga did? Oh, how about we do that as well? Because if you look at like the Death Note movie, not the Japanese one, obviously, the Netflix one, it's completely different for no reason. It's dumb. They clearly wrote something from scratch, and it's just horrible. Like, it's just bad in every single sense of the word. So if they can just do what has already been done and just adapt it, that seems like a universal W to them. So I kind of wish that One Piece isn't like... It's like what I said at the top of the video, right? When we read the interview and they were like, oh, so it turns out people want it to be like the source material. Oh, we didn't realize that. I hope it's more so that, and not like, oh my god, look at One Piece, let's make everything into live action, and just like, let's throw everything at the wall and surely one of them will stick. I don't want it to be that. I want it to be a more calculated approach of, oh, so you adapted this smartly and it worked. Let's do that. Let's not change it. Let's not make it for a Western audience. Let's just do what they did,
But that is my review. Those are my thoughts on the One Piece live action. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to smack my face right here. Subscribe to the channel. Let's keep making big...
Every time this picture pops up, oh my god. The fact that he still has it too.
Channel number go bigger. Over here next to my head is a couple more videos you can check out if you enjoyed this.
The fact that it's just in the middle of the screen is just so cursed.
Links to my social media, as well as my Patreon to support me directly, and my clothing brand, nonsense.jp. Check it out. Links in the description. And I will see you all in the next one. Peace.
And the thing is, like look at how his shot is framed, right? He clearly knows where he's going to be standing. He knows what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. Anyway, let me link the video. That's a good video by Joey. So basically, he enjoyed it, which is good. It was good. Josh the manga lad came to retrieve his title and watched anime. Well, did he watch anime? I guess he kind of didn't. I guess technically he did not watch anime. He specifically avoided watching anime. Kind of big brain, if you think about it. Well, yeah. Anyway, like I said, One Piece is a universal W so far. I love it. It's great. We'll see what happens to it as we get into Season 2, Season 3, and all that. I can't wait to see. My favorite thing about these big series with big reveals and stuff is later on watching reaction mashups online, right? So, can you imagine something like Water 7? And just like seeing 100 different people react to that certain thing and that certain thing, you know? It's gonna be so cool.